we are recording. Thank you.
All right, thanks. In the spirit of Martin Luther King, the holiday this week, I thought I would try to take some inspiration from that for our prayer this morning. So bear with me. It's not a natural, easy segue, but hopefully you'll see where I'm going with it. So just present this. So in my senior AP art history class, I'm afforded the immense privilege to study artists like the one shown here, Faith Ringgold. And as I said, in the spirit of Martin Luther King this past Monday, who elevated the voices of marginalized people, both in America and around the world, I think the work of this artist highlights so many important intersections for our work. Faith Ringgold, if you don't know about her art, I'll just give a quick bio, is a pioneering artist who challenged convention and broke barriers to acceptance in the art world on the grounds of both race and gender throughout her life and in her career. She was born in Harlem in 1930. She grew up in a time when opportunities for African-American artists were extremely limited, particularly for females. And despite this, she pursued her passion for art, studying at the City College of New York and the American Artists School. Her early work primarily focused on painting, but she later experimented with quilting and storytelling through her now famous story quilts. These quilts now not only featured her own vibrant, colorful, imaginative paintings, but also incorporated texts that told personal stories and often dared to address some important social and political themes. Quilting gave Ringgold a tangible means to connect her heritage of maternal Black women, descendants of slaves, to communicating a relevant and powerful artistic message. Ringgold's work often deals with themes of race, gender, and social justice, and she was a vocal advocate for greater representation for African-American artists in the art world, an experience that she knew firsthand as a woman of color who had consistently seen her work eschewed by galleries, museums, and schools. It wasn't until the early 70s that Ringgold's work began to gain recognition, and she had solo exhibitions at museums and galleries. In the 80s, her work was included in major traveling exhibitions and retrospectives, and her quilts were acquired for permanent collections in many major museums, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the MoMA in New York City. Ringgold is still alive today, and she is a strong feminist, and her works often depicted the struggles of Black women and their experiences. Her work has inspired many artists to explore the intersection of art, activism, imagination, and storytelling. She continues to be a powerful voice for racial and gender equality and continues to create art that reflects on these issues. So I wanted to just open it up with one of her pieces. This one from 1994 from the French collection series is entitled Dancing in the Louvre. And I thought that we could just take 60 seconds and use a word or a phrase, less than 5 words, to describe a personal response that you have to seeing this piece. And write your thoughts. What comes to mind for you in the chat? As I read through the chat, I'm seeing a lot of words that our students use to describe their first impression this phenomenological moment of seeing a piece of art for the first time. And a lot of them talk about this idea of combining worlds, relationships. This is a story about young Black women and girls in relationship with each other. Celebration and joy are words that frequently come up. Beauty and color. Freedom. So thank you all for belonging. Very good. Maternal feminine relationships. These are all excellent examples, and I think exactly what Faith Ringgold would expect the audience to hopefully see in experiencing this work. So keep some of the words that you see with you as we join in prayer this morning, and hopefully as an anchor for why we do this work. The joy, the belonging, the relationships, the human story, the changing of a narrative, the sense of belonging that we all deserve to feel, and the dignity that we have within. So I just kind of put a few things together in terms of our prayer. So in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Dear God, we pray in thanksgiving for the power of art, creativity, and beauty to transform us. We thank you for color, light, and texture. We thank you for stories and for storytellers, those we've lived and the ones we've only dreamed of, for the stories that tell about our past, and for the storytellers who dare to rewrite them. We thank you for the joy of dancing in the company of friends. We thank you for the innocence of childhood. We thank you for the gift of tradition, for passing of skills from generation to generation. We pray to be inspired by those who replace exclusive and discriminatory practices with the joy of inclusivity and belonging, the simplicity of reimagining how and for whom a space is deemed acceptable. We ask for the courage to challenge injustice, discrimination, and intolerance everywhere. We welcome the opportunity to have our assumptions challenged, our perspectives changed by the changing of narrative. We seek the strength and commitment to do this work together, to be energized by the creative forces for good that come from a global community with a shared vision. St. Ignatius of Loyola, pray for us. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, Dan. So welcome again to those who came on after we started. We are recording the session, so I just want to let you all know that. This is JSN's first full official year of our Ignatian Global Scholars pilot. You are all at different points in the journey, from Sal, who I don't think is able to join us today, but he graduated 3 Ignatian Global Scholars last year, to many others who you are in the process of discerning how to get it started, or to get it started, or even in the pre-discerning phase. Is this for us? The workshop is for all of you. I'm going to begin with 2 updates, and then Rob will speak about getting started. Cora will talk about the recruitment of students. We'll have a 20-minute break. Therese will discuss retaining students, and Jenny Ehalt will talk about managing progress. Each presenter is going to present for a short period of time, as much as they need to kind of share where they are and their experience. And then the rest of that allotted time is for all of you to join in the conversation of what are your questions, what are your own experiences, what are your inputs. The purpose of today is that all of you who are doing this in process now, or about to, that you walk away with some solid, concrete calm of, okay, I've got this now, answers to questions, just a clear way of proceeding. We are in a pilot program, so we are gathering data and developing, and we will periodically be looking back and deepening and strengthening the program. So today we're going to focus on the in-school process. Trips and exchanges, we're handling in a conversation, like a simultaneous conversation where there's work going on in that separately from this. And please mark your calendars for March 8th at 3 p.m. We are 3 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to hold a JSN virtual coffee shop on specifically creating and strengthening global exchanges. And Dan Honorelli and Kristen Torgerson are going to help facilitate that conversation. So the updates, these are both conversations in process, but with very positive outlooks of success. So the first is we are in discussion as JSN with Educate Magis for a creation of a resource area that will connect resources with our inventory and our Ignatian Global Scholars needs, a conversation space, a globally connected work area that we've been talking about a lot in our meetings. So we're working with them. It's a slow and steady process because we want to do it well and useful before we jump in. So that is ongoing and in process. And the second is we are in conversation with Seattle University to receive, for our students, our Ignatian Global Scholars, to receive college credit for the successful completion of the certificate program. We're working really intensely on the details. There's a lot behind this I'm finding out. But we wanted to carry the most weight possible on a student's transcript and to mean the most to all of our universities and colleges, both Jesuit and other. So those two processes are conversations are in process. And any of this that goes on, please, then you're like, oh, I've got a separate question I want to ask, just start jotting them down and you can email me or whatever at the end, because I think things are going to come up that we'll want to maybe address at another time. So with that, let's start with the important stuff, which is we'll start with Rob Chura from St. Louis University. He'll talk about how to get started.
Great, thanks. I just was trying to make sure I've got all of my notes prepared and everything is clear. So we at St. Louis U High, I think, are probably in a very similar spot as a lot of you. This is something that, we kind of came into this game a little while back, about a year ago, as far as, we kind of saw the, different conversations about the possibility of this program becoming a reality. And so, it's something that, I think, the key takeaway for me as we've gone into this whole process is intentionality, and you can't go too slow. I think, immediately our first reactions, myself, Maria Paz-Erker, my assistant director of global ed, and, some of the administrators that, are more involved in our day-to-day operations, immediately kind of the thought was like, how quickly can we get this in place? So, and to me, that seems like a problematic approach, and one that, ultimately, will kind of lead to some 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or possibly 1 step forward, 2 step back type realities. So that's, I think, kind of the mentality so far that has, I think, been more productive for us, is trying to, really take a big, 30,000 feet approach first, and kind of see what it is that we need to put in place first. And for us, the logical conclusion on that was for this to be something that we take to the board. Anything that you're hoping to do, I think, this goes for any major initiative at the school level. Starting at the board is never a bad place to begin. I mean, you can't get any higher than that. And the other side of it is that, I think we in global ed, a lot of times, we're kind of have the blinders on of doing the day-to-day work, making sure that the trains run on schedule and, that the results happen, kind of where the rubber hits the road. But when we make sure that our work is something that at the board level, people understand and know about, that can only yield better results as far as buy-in institutionally and just, for the message to kind of be uniform and really, and also, when we started at the board level, there was, some feedback and insight that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise. We have some board members who brought some interesting perspectives to some of our work that, we wouldn't have otherwise gotten if we didn't start at that level. So, of course, we just passed it on through the proper channels and, it was unanimously supported. It really wasn't even so much like a vote or anything. It was just to make sure that everybody was aware, of the reality of it. And then kind of the next level down the ladder was on the administrational level. So I'm not sure exactly what everyone has as far as your admin structure. But for us, we have a principal and a vice principal for academics, a vice principal for student life, a vice principal for mission, and then campus ministry kind of falls in that group. So, we kind of then took it to that level again, without any real pushback and, created a lot of excitement. But, as we looked at it, these, in order for this to be a really successful program, the academic side of it, the vice principal kind of needs to know about, the coursework that we're going to need to support an initiative like this. People in campus ministry are going to need to kind of know the, their role in all of this. And so, farming all of that out and just making sure that people are aware, because there's going to be some asks on their end ultimately too, to kind of oversee different parts of this. So again, once we kind of took it to that level, again, without any, major pushback, then we have a structure at St. Louis U High called Instructional Council. So that's where, and by the way, which was created by John Moran. So Catherine, you'll definitely be able to take that idea back if necessary, if you don't have it already. But Instructional Council, that's where departments meet. And, some of the smaller grain-sized aspects of St. Louis U High. Our learning center, for example, is involved in that. Our library staff is involved in that. So, then, the idea kind of worked its way down to those stakeholders, again, not so much for the sake of debate or, for everyone's for there to be, a discussion of whether or not it's worth it, but just so that everybody's in the know and that everybody can, have some say in, how this might get implemented, because that kind of then builds down to where we are right now, which is building the infrastructure to really administrate this properly. We, as we went through a schedule redesign this year, for example, one of the things that we consciously put into our new schedule was the reality of an advisory period. And so advisory, what that is, because it's still kind of a new world that we're living in, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have an hour-long period where programming like global ed and DEI and sustainability, and we have a club called SLU Forge, which is SLU for gender equality. things like that, programs that people used to always just try to kind of fight for time at all school assemblies or like during PD days and things like that. We built in that advisory period. And by the way, our school counselors absolutely love it because it's an opportunity for them to meet by grade level, and our college counselors, et cetera. So anyway, things of that nature kind of got woven into this advisory schedule that we have on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And for example, just yesterday, Maria Paz and I were able to present to the entire freshman class, which is the first class that is going to have the global education graduation requirement placed upon them. But the week before, we presented to the entire sophomore class because they're going to be our first set of Ignatian Global Scholars. So finding that space to really market and communicate this idea, we felt like that was a definite need, for this not to just be kind of something that gets lost in the notes of, your parent Sunday night letter that you send out to your community, and, that you have to answer 5 and 6 emails on every Monday about, what's all that about? My son doesn't even know what that is, that type of thing. So, again, we just kind of happened to be lucky that we were in a schedule process where a lot of different people were asking for those types of opportunities. And, fortunately, we were able to kind of recognize like, yeah, that's going to be the way that we're going to be able to get this out. Because otherwise, it's just going to be word of mouth. It's just going to be things on your website. There really needs to be that intentional space to communicate what this program is and how it happens. And then I guess that's kind of the last piece of the infrastructure that we're now working on still. And I'd love to hear kind of where other people are. And that's, building like the mechanism to oversee this. That's where Maria Paz and myself, kind of have had those moments where we look at each other in meetings and say, what exactly have we taken on here? Because, there is so much monitoring and so much, paperwork and overseeing, guiding students through this process. So essentially what we did at the end of that, and again, this might be helpful. We'll kind of see, we're still testing it out. What we did at the end of that meeting with the sophomore class, who's ultimately going to be the first group of Ignatian Global Scholars, was to have them do a reflection where they indicated their level of commitment and interest in this program. And, also kind of gathered potential kids who would like to continue to receive information and meet with us individually to kind of map out how they're going to make this happen. Because we kind of felt like if there's not that meeting time now, with that smaller group of kids, and we're just kind of hoping that this happens all through emails and, various other messaging, it's going to be one of those things that, you're going to get a bunch of juniors and seniors who, forgot to do, like there's something that now needs to be undone that they didn't do sophomore year or junior year. That just didn't get picked up in that initial process. So we're in the process of kind of building that out. The way that we're going to do it is have the kids officially apply in March, right before we break for spring break. And then when we come back after spring break, to start those initial meetings where we kind of come up with a plan of this is how we're going to get it done. And, to have like maybe quarterly check-ins with each of those students as we start to move down the line. So any questions or things that maybe would require some clarity?
I have a quick question. Sorry, Catherine. Hi, Ariel from Gonzaga in DC.
Yes.
Did you reach out to or plan to reach out to parents as well as part of the process? I know here at Gonzaga, especially, teaching all boys, a lot of times the messages don't get passed on to the parents. And as you were saying, if you put things on the website or emails, a lot of times those get missed. And from talking to parents, I know they mentioned to me that, oh, I just didn't know about the program, or I didn't know that you guys are doing this. I wish I knew, last year, so I could encourage my son to do it. So
yeah, I mean, we're we're not in an ideal position on that. We realized as the year went on that we have a lot of those meetings like that at the beginning of the school year in the fall, where it's parent groups by grade level, and this wasn't something that was in those plans yet. And so as we approach that next year, that's definitely going to be something that goes into those. In the meantime, we're kind of playing catch up with, what we call our Parent Connect, which goes out every Sunday at 4:00. It's at times like drinking from a fire hose, but it's right now kind of the best tool that we have to get this on the parent radar. But definitely next year in the fall, we want to weave that into our parent orientation piece. Good question.
What are the requirements for those students? You say your freshman class now will have a global ed requirement. What are you asking of that as that baseline requirement for your entire student body?
Sure. So every student in their 4 years at SLU will have to engage in, we're keeping the language very flexible for obvious reasons. We'll have to engage in one significant global education experience. So, we've right now built that out to, some of the obvious things like our language immersion exchanges, our service learning, our service immersion exchanges, our educational travel programs, but all of those with a follow-up like reflection activity. It's not just, seat time, I went on it and that's it. But there's a reflection that's going to be kind of universal to all of those experiences. We're also focusing heavily on in-house experiences. So we have a club that's called One World Club that Maria Paz is the head of, and each quarter we have significant events that the students can participate in, as well as just being a part of One World Club. And so, we want to create those opportunities in-house, whether it's a speaker series or participating in an SDG Change Makers program that happens through the United Nations Club here in St. Louis, or participating in some of the other virtual programming that we have during the year. That was one of the first points that we made in our presentation is when we say you need to participate in global ed, it doesn't mean you have to get a passport and travel somewhere. Global ed is first and foremost local, and then, obviously has that global component woven into it in some way or another. So, we wanted to stress on acting locally and creating those opportunities. So that's what we've kind of packaged out to them is all of these opportunities that you can get involved in. And when we had the freshmen do that reflection, that was what we required of them was, all right, show us now what your plan is. What is it that you're going to do and when, so that we can, again, kind of work with you guys. Since it's the entire freshman class, this won't happen in person like we will with the Ignatian Global Scholars, but we're going to at least kind of try to monitor it electronically through messaging.
Can I ask a real quick question about budget and equity? I'm sure you have, but what's you're requiring students to pick from a wide variety of things on the menu. Yep. Let's say a student picks service immersion or language immersion or ed travel, but that student, can't afford to do that. What's the budgetary?
Yeah, we have financial aid woven into that whole experience. So, as we say with, and I'm sure it's the same at all of our institutions, we never want finances to be the reason why a kid can't participate in something. And we're all in pretty fortunate situations where usually those types of things can be found. So right now, it's something that, we essentially look at the student the same way that we view them as far as financial aid to attend the school. We use that same formula or lens to view them as far as what they're eligible for financial aid wise for global ed. So, we have, if a kid is on full financial aid, or he's one of what we call our Francis Scholars, obviously, no questions. We fund that, and monies have been set aside for that very purpose. At the same time, institutionally, we're working on a specific global ed campaign to increase that so that it's not, right now we're just kind of pulling from one bucket to fill another, but we want to do this in a little bit more intentional, larger plan.
I'm going to just pop in really quickly. So I put a link in the chat, which is a shared resource folder on our JSN SharePoint. If you have trouble accessing, let me know and I'll take care of it. But with some of the questions that were popping up in the chat, Rob, would it be possible for you to share in that SharePoint? You can also share a link in there. You can upload a link.
Yeah.
The global ed requirement, and also I think it might be interesting if you're willing to share the presentation, if you had one that you used for the sophomores, for
Exactly.
specifically. And then of course, and all of you beware, because the minute he wrote this global ed requirement, I already put it on my hemispheres list. So we'll be able to read about that in more detail as in one of our upcoming issues, I'm sure, because it's very pertinent things. Keep asking. I just wanted to pop in and make sure everyone can access that. And
yeah, I have, like you were saying, I have a lot of those resources that I talked about. I didn't want to immediately just, dump all that in there. And so as a follow-up, I'll share all that stuff out after we're finished today.
Thank you. And anyone who shares, if you want to just start maybe put it in a folder or start with your school so that when we're looking at that, it kind of goes, I know what that is.
Rob, I have maybe it's more of a comment than a question, but I know you and Maria Paz have worked really closely together on a lot of different things, but it sounds like on this as well, implementing the IGS program at SLU. So maybe could you talk a little bit too about the benefits or what you've noticed working as part of a team and the importance of that in making it happen?
Yeah, it was one of the things that I mentioned yesterday in my presentation to the freshman class that, this is, I think, something that requires a lot of buy-in, not just ideologically, but, budget wise. And so about, 4 or 5 years ago when we went about the task of creating the Office of Global Ed, that was something that we needed to have a clear idea about, like, how are we going to really make this happen? Because, we all know in our schools, like, the photography club gets started. And the way that everybody tries to do it first is like, hey, who can we find that maybe will do that for like almost nothing, And but with this, the importance of this, and this being one of our SMART goals coming out of our Visioning 2018 process, fortunately, there was that, commitment to doing this the right way. And so, we were able to, at the time we had One World Club in place. At the time, I was kind of overseeing a lot of the international programs, kind of de facto, just, they were popping up, but people were kind of coming to me and saying, hey, how did you do the Russian program, et cetera? And so we were able to say, like, all right, here's the way to do it. And that has been, I think, without that larger you know, multifaceted approach to this, you know, we wouldn't have been able to get as much done as we're, you know, as we have been able to, because, you know, we've just got people who bring a variety of different skills to the table. You know, Maria Paz is amazing with her ability in-house to get these things organized. And, you know, we also have a third colleague, another Spanish teacher, Magdalena Alvarado, who also has a stipended kind of assistant assistant One World Club faculty member. And, you know, that I think, you know, many hands makes for easy, you know, lighter lifting or whatever that expression is. And we've been fortunate too that we have, you know, somebody else who solely does DEI. I know that a lot of you guys have DEI in your job titles. That's Frank Koveric, and that's his thing. And he's, you know, also, you know, had a reduction in course load. He teaches 2 classes. I teach 3. Maria Paz is not there yet, but we're kind of trying to push things in that direction where she gets some relief from classwork as well.
Rob, do you and the DEI director work a lot closely?
So we have this year created a new, you know, administrational group, if you want to call it that. You know, just you know, a group to get together where our director of DEI, Frank Koveric, myself, Maria Paz, and then we also have a person who's in charge of sustainability. Anne-Marie Lodholtz, who maybe some of you have met at some of the meetings. So the 4 of us get together quarterly and just kind of compare and share out and see where we can piggyback on each other's efforts, since they're so interrelated in a lot of ways.
And Christina, in response to that, that's something that we've been doing at Jesuit for the last couple of years. Our DEI office, which actually has 2 full-time people, we're very lucky. And then our Arupe Center, which is Christian service, that has 2 full-time people also. And then me as global and ecological justice. We actually meet weekly. Just so happens that it works out. And so it's a great time to connect and both problem solve and talk through different things, but also support each other in programming, because there's a lot of programming that happens. And I found, like, Rob, hearing you talk, it just reminds me that it's so important to not operate in isolation in any of these things. And so just to know that you've got other people who you can count on or piggyback ideas off of, or who can share in that heavy lifting when the time comes, it's just nice to know you're not doing it alone, which I think a lot of us have been trailblazing in many ways for many years. And so it's a good pairing.
Exactly. And I think too, you know, we, you know, I know most of the group personally, we all do this for the right reasons. We're all humble. We're all devoted to the cause. And so a lot of times, like, we don't look for spotlight or attention or anything, like, you know, like, it's just kind of in our nature. Like, I do it for other reasons. But when you do kind of get the word out there, and I know sometimes it feels like, you know, I don't want to, like, feel this, make it look like I'm showboating or anything like that. But it really, like, it never hurts for more people to know about all the things that are happening. And it might feel like attention mongering, but it's, you know, it's, take it, you know, like, get people's attention, because ultimately, you know, it just brings more people into the circle.
Rob, you mentioned feedback from the board, and I was just curious if you could share maybe some things that were helpful to you after speaking with them.
You know, just when, for example, you know, we have various board members who are, you know, the heads of various you know, non-for-profit, like, local organizations that, you know, we have loose ties with, you know, International Institute, or, you know, Boys Hope, Girls Hope, and things like that. So, you know, for them to hear about these things, and, you know, for them to say, oh my gosh, yeah, you know, like, if SLU, you know, and, you know, puts this program in place, like, I could totally see where they could come to our facility and, you know, potentially do some things, you know, like they represent constituents, parts of our community that, you know, could easily be involved just organizationally, or potentially, you know, devote some resources to it. That said, that, you know, that hasn't happened yet. We haven't bubbled it up to that level yet, but just the fact that these people are aware never hurts. Great. I mean, I'll share out, you know, my notes of the things that I went over there and some of the presentations and so forth. You know, feel free to follow up with any questions. Hope that was helpful.
So helpful. Thank you. Up next is Cora Antonio on how to recruit students. If it sounds good, I think I'd like to just give you a minute or two to just let everything that just happened sort of percolate. And if you want to jot some notes, or sometimes I feel we jump so quickly. It's 11:42. Let's at 11:45, or whatever 45, wherever you are. We'll have Cora begin. So a couple minutes to percolate. Thank you, Rob. As we start transitioning, I forgot to share one of my most exciting updates. It looks like we are going to be organizing and planning a global cohort JSN gathering for March of 2024. So, woohoo, it's exciting. So we're just, I look at you all and I think of where we started and where we are, and nicely done. Okay, Cora.
Good morning, everyone. There I am. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share with you some of the things we've done here at Bellarmine to recruit students. As I usually use Microsoft Teams. Where's the share your screen option? Oh, here we go. Okay, here we are. Tech nightmares, guys. Remember online teaching? No fun. So I have a very brief presentation and then, we'll open up for questions. Can everybody see everything okay? Holler if you can. How to recruit students. So I've learned by making a lot of mistakes. So here are my lessons from what I've learned and, offer to you all. So first of all, in talking to students, really want to stay focused on what's in it for me, because a lot of students want to know, why do I want to do another program, get involved in something else? I'm already an athlete, or in speech and debate, or robotics. So something we've been trying to use, just keep it simple for students and straight to the point, is the Ignatian Global Scholars Program is being part of something that's bigger than yourself. We talk about how, don't you feel like there's got to be something more out there? There's just got to be something missing. And so we talk to them about taking their education to the next level through this program, exploring and discovering how they're connected to each other beyond Bellarmine and even beyond the United States, and to the planet. I put plant there, I need to fix that. And of course, always coming back to the definition, and I think it's a good reminder for anybody on the team to stay focused on the definition that I know a lot of people put a lot of work into, and focusing on the words interconnected again, emphasizing relationships, and the mission of reconciliation and justice, that this is a very much a social justice oriented program under God. So in being a part of something bigger than yourself, I think a lot of students don't really know how big the Jesuit schools network is, or even globally. I don't know if these numbers are right, Catherine. You need to check me on that. So I use the map from Educate IGS, and I think students are just amazed because when you're at your home school, they're really just focused on their immediate environment and not even beyond Bellarmine, even to the United States, the JSN. So in talking about that, it's something that's more tangible for students to understand and connect to. And, good or bad, the system that we're working with is kids want something. They want to get something out of it. And so we talk about, actually show them the certificate from the JSN, that I tell students that it's coming from the global office in Washington, DC. And I don't know, for some reason that really impresses them. Then I want to share all that with students before we get into the nitty-gritty of the program, because again, we're trying to bring students' interest in and stimulate their interest. Then we talk about that it's a 2-year program, and here at Bellarmine, we want to make a senior award, senior recognition on the program at graduation, an awards night, and working on getting that designation as an Ignatian Global Scholar on the transcripts. So until a student is actually in the program, and again, we're in the context of just launching it. So we're launching it now. We're just January. So we took a whole semester last semester to lead up to this point. We don't go into the nitty-gritty in the beginning, but students do want to know what they're getting into, as they should. And so we talk to them about there are requirements, but we really want to emphasize that it's maximizing their education. It's taking what's already in the curriculum and then giving a global view to what they're already doing at school. So there's not like this, a lot of students are wondering if they have to take an extra course, although some schools have a global education course. We don't yet at Bellarmine, working on that. But just having them see that there's already things going on campus, things that they're involved in, and there are things, or in the curriculum, there are, a lot of the curriculum already has the global lens to it, and at least a unit in the course. And so we want students to understand we're not trying to stress them out. We want it, again, maximize, you're already here. Why not get a global perspective on what you're already doing at Bellarmine. So the very first thing I want to emphasize to everybody is gather a team, gather a team, gather a team. And I focus here, there's the African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I love, Rob, what you had said. I wrote it down. You can't go too slow. So thank you for that, Rob. But yeah, just pace yourself. And when you have a team, as in the scriptures, in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, and also here in Romans 12, there are many members, but we're one body, the body of Christ, and everybody has different gifts. So the first thing I would suggest, even before you're recruiting students and you're developing your programs, is I want to sit down with the principal, because this person she has a high view on the faculty and staff. And I said, hey, Sonia, who can you recommend to be on this team? And because she'll know who's already taxed, because there's some people who do everything at school and there's some people who don't do enough. So she gave me some people to inquire, to talk with, and I did that. And that really helps. And each person brings a different perspective into that program. Particularly here at Bellarmine, we have 4 faculty and 1 staff. The 1 staff person is one of the directors in the Emergence program. So that helps a lot when you're developing a global program. I'm going to jump right now to, and this PowerPoint's already loaded up in the shared drive that Catherine gave us. So OneNote notebook is not my forte, but it is somebody on my team or our team, the Global Scholars team here. And she is a guru at it. So she set up this OneNote notebook for us to share all our ideas and to kind of track everything. So I highly recommend, whether it's in Microsoft OneNote notebook, or if it's on Google Drive or some other application that you and your team, or even if it's just you alone right now. By the way, you're never alone because you've got us, to start get organized and keep everything so that you can track your progress, and then just take what you've had and redo it. And I know you guys probably do that already. I just found that this was really helpful, especially, we have many gifts. This one person on the team, this was her gift. And I'm going to focus here on the students tab. So we do have meetings. We're working out Canvas, and we set our timelines. Also very important, I'll just share that real quick. We have our timelines on what we want to do, brainstorm that on launching the program and keeping yourself and your team accountable. So in students, in recruiting students, first of all, we sat down, we're launching them, and in good Ignatian and JSN leadership seminars taught me is to do these cohorts. So our first cohort, which is launching this spring as we speak, is the Ignatius cohort. And we just decided to come up with a lot of different cohort names. That's kind of fun to do. And then we all on the team wrote down second semester sophomores that might be interested or good candidates for the program. And then we also talked to other people on campus, just like Rob talked about, getting connected with, I think he calls it the instructional council. We call it academic council, co-curriculars, all of them to get feedback. At the same time, when we were thinking about it, we thought of students who are freshmen now, who would be great sophomore year. So just keep that ongoing list so you don't have to redo something. Just you can keep adding it to it. That's another nice thing about the notebook. Then we sat down and we drafted an application email for students. And you can personalize it. You can see it here. We, like I said, gather a team. It's better together. We all came up and, and you don't have to do this we probably meet every other week for about 40 minutes. But if you don't have time, because everybody's taxed, is just create a shared doc, which we do, and then people can just get on there. and type in there. And this is for an example, or the application email. This is who we were inviting students, like, you know, you were thought of and we think highly of you, and we'd like to ask you to consider applying. And then we put, like, of course, a due date for the program. In addition to that, we created a form. So we linked it on the email, and in the Microsoft form, we all came up with different questions that we were interested in. And I thought it was so great to be part of this team because they thought of things I would never think of. And so you can see here, like, we wanted to find out their primary language spoken at home. What are your preferred pronouns? And we ask it permission if it's cultural background, co-curriculars. We want to find out how taxed out, you know, how taxed students are before having them in the program. We talk about the different faith backgrounds. What do you like to do in your free time? What is, et cetera, et cetera. You can just see the list here. It was interesting in particular, by the way, to ask them what was some global issue that they had an interest in, and so many things came up in the form. And when they submitted that, that gave us an idea to who we should invite back for interviews. So when we did that, we looked at the results, and we decided to invite 12 to interview. So again, the process, we thought through it carefully, and we had them fill out a form, yet another form, guys, to ask them when they're available, because our availability is different on the team for doing interviews. So we wanted to find out student availability and kind of match that to each other. We didn't want to say, come when I'm available, because it's not about us. It's about the students, so trying to mesh those two together. And then what we did, let me see if I can find it. There it is. So in, I don't, you know, for most forms, you can extract an Excel spreadsheet. So when the student told us their free periods and what community time, we have something here at Bellarmine called community time, they're available. Then we decided each student should be interviewed by 2 different people on the team. And even 2 people can interview at the same time, but we just wanted, so we created a spreadsheet so we could all sign up to do interviews with the students, which we are in the process of now. And going back to the notebook. Then after that, we sent out another email, which I'm happy to share all of these with you guys, so you can just edit it and make it your own if you want. Totally what you want. Use it for scratch paper. So then we said, congratulations, thank you for your patience. Here is your interview schedule. And then what we did, when we came up with the application questions, we thought the questions about Arupe were kind of heavy. So we didn't put it in the original form. We decided to put it in the interview. And so before coming to the interview, we gave them 2 excerpts from Arupe. You can see here one for men foreign with others, and here's another excerpt. And we told them to read it and come prepared. Okay, so they had time to pray and discern if that's their faith background. Each interview is 30 minutes long, and we said, what we asked in the interview is, like, from what you read, what stands out to you? Of course, if they wanted to hear it back at the interview, we've said, hey, let us read it back to you if you don't remember everything. And they told us. So that was very, very helpful. And then we came up with interview questions that were beyond that form. Okay, so here's the question about Arupe. And then we also said things like, we asked, tell me about a time you failed. How do you respond? Tell me about a time you worked well with the group, because we imagine that in their cohort, they're going to meet with an advisor, one of us on the team, at least once a month, and they're going to meet as a cohort at least once a month. So they're going to journey together. As we've learned, that's the best thing to do on Ignatian pilgrimage. We asked them also to tell us about a leader or mentor and what did they look up to them for. We were asking this because they are going to be working with the group. And of course, global citizenship is about being connected. And then here's some other things that we just came up with, like, what is a justice issue you're passionate about? And, you know, what is your interest in the program? Things like that. Then people are keeping notes differently. Two of us are keeping it on the notebook. So then with each candidate, I just, during the interview, for each question, I just did a really quick bullet point on what that student responded. So that in the notebook I found is that everybody, when we go back to talk about each candidate to bring them on to the, as a scholar, then we'll all have information about that candidate. There's Kat's notes. I wanted to show you, I think, one more thing. So after the interviews, we learned from the immersions director on the team that when she sends out for immersions, getting feedback on students, we have a form or an Excel spreadsheet that's really quick. 1, 2, or 3. After you interview, are you excited about the candidate? No concerns, or there's some concerns. So we're going to do that with each of our candidates. And here's the 5 people on the team. And that way it'll be easy for us. And I think everybody's so busy doing having something virtual to work on, so people can work on it at their own time. That's very helpful. So that's kind of where we're at now. And so far it's working well with students. I'm going to stop my share. And pretty much that's what I have for you all in terms of recruiting students, and open to any questions.
Cora, hi, it's
Yes.
Kristen from the other Bellarmine. Question for you, how many total applicants did you have compared to the number you accepted? And did you have like a preset number for your cohort groups?
Yes. Yeah, thank you. So I think we had we sent the email out to about 25 or 26 people. And 12 responded. And we're going to hit up the other 13, again, at the end of the school year to invite them because they're juniors next year. So 12 responded. Of the 12, they were all good candidates. We were questionable about one, and that's now we're in the interview process. We're interviewing all 12. We hope to have 10 because there's 5 of us. We were thinking, 2 people each to personally mentor this through the next 2 years, and then growing that. But if we ended up with all 12, that'll be okay too.
Okay, thank you.
Cora,
oh, go ahead.
was there anything for parents in the process? Was there a sign off or an okay, or this was just strictly students?
No, thank you. And I saw that that question came up with Rob too, so I wrote it down on my notes talking. But there happened to be, what was it? It was the Lady of Guadalupe celebration in December. We had some Latinx students who were applicants. And I did get to talk to parents there, but that wasn't intentional. It just happened to be there. And the parents, I have to say, in talking to them personally, 3 of them, they were very excited. They're like, wait, this is exciting. Why didn't you tell me about this? You have to do this. So, yeah, but I do think we need to work on something more formal with parents. And probably another thing we're thinking about is putting it out in English, Spanish, and for our context, Vietnamese.
Cora, I have a,
Sorry,
can I
Jenny, go
real
ahead.
quick? That's okay. So Cora, kind of similar to Rob, it sounds like you have a team and a team of 5 people. So could you talk a little bit about how that team developed or who is on it?
Yeah, so for sure I did, and I had to work on 2 teams this year because I'm just a summit coordinator, which guys, I'm not going to do that again. It's too much, 1,800 people. Oh my God. So yeah, I was sitting down with the principal and asking, and first, it started all the way last year, right? Team, we were meeting in February in Phoenix, and then, was it Phoenix? Where did we go, Catherine? It was somewhere in there, Tucson. But so sitting down, and the principal already knew about it. So, and I said, hey, you know what we literally did? This is our principal's method. She got out the phone list, the faculty and staff phone list, and we went down each person and she recommended. Then I hit them up via email to say, can I have a conversation? And, you know, and always just pray and discern. I think that choosing a team that has different interests globally than your own. Because again, you want to not have everybody think the same thing. It's just way more helpful. And then I found that actually they're very excited. I asked, I think 5 people and 4 people accepted. And they knew it was like a 2-year haul. So yeah, I don't know if that really answers your question, Jenny.
Yeah, no, it does. I think I'm trying to figure out, because I don't have a team of people, and I of course I see the value in that, but it's figuring out how to get started and who the right people are. You know, of course, people are busy and tapped out. So even just the ratio of, do you have mostly classroom teachers? Do you have administrators? Who are your the other 4 people?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, good question. So one of them is another religious study faculty, but he's also on the faculty, we call it FSAB over here. So they're the faculty team that meets with the principal regarding faculty issues. There are people who are like involved in other things. Another religious studies teacher, and she's involved in doing an immersion in the South for African American studies. We have another person, and she is in student activities, and she is the coordinator for student leaders, you know, student leadership teams, and our Big Brothers program. And then we have, so it's very diverse. And then the other one is like, she's one of the directors in the immersion program. So it would have been nice, I think, if I had somebody else from service learning. And think of like DEIC, you know, service learning and campus ministry. If you can get people from those teams, I think it would be helpful. It's because there's faculty members there's, you know, interesting, but it'd be better to have, for this kind of a program, I think, a more diverse team. Interestingly enough, I want to, at the end, there's 2 people of color, me and another female, and there's only 1 male. The other 3 are females. So
Cora, I'm really impressed with how organized your team is, and really thinking of every step along the way. My question is, how do you prevent this from being another sort of elite Brahmin student group who are already getting all the awards, already getting all the accolades, already passing all the AP exams, you know, because I think for me, what we're looking at is, how do we open this up to the students who aren't the 4.4 GPA students and don't have all the already existing sort of benefits and advantages compared to other students. So I'd like you to speak a little bit about that.
yeah, for sure. And that was also our intention as well. So when we were thinking about students, we thought about that, you know, and none of them, maybe except for 1, might be that 4-point-something person. And we looked at that. That's why when we sent out word, because we were just saying, who should we recommend? Oh, this kid's really interesting in class, because they're only sophomores. We haven't had much contact with them. But in the you know, invitation to the application form, we put like, what are you involved in? What are your interests? What breaks your heart in the world today? And then we also, we were very intentional at looking at the makeup of the composition of different students. We have different faith backgrounds. We have robotics, speech and debate, and athlete. So I think that it's dependent on the team to be very intentional about looking at that for the students, because we do not want this to be another checkbox. And we say that to students. And I think that's the second thing, be very intentional about how you project the program, or you know, when you're recruiting students, let them know this is about social justice issues. This is about making that, like, what we emphasized in the program was not so much the curriculum and that, because we have students from the diversity groups and all that. What we were emphasizing is the action piece, the project of the program, and then well, of course, the reflections that are coming. So I think it's, you know, how you spin it and how we personally look at it, because like you, we do not want this to be like everybody else. Like, you know, like what you just said, it's only for straight A kids.
I'd like to just add in, especially for those of you who are newer to the process, this was specifically created not for those 4.4 take all the AP students. It's really a chance for our students with the big hearts, with the care, like authentic care of the world, to have a space to shine and to excel within their interests and really what moves them. So I'm really glad that came up, and maybe as we continue development, it's something we might want to even put a little written note or something to really emphasize what a student profile is that we would look for. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. In addition to that, it's like when you're gathering your team, to have that really clear with the team. And I know it looks really organized and everything, but that comes from the team, and just being really intentional when you're drafting the questions to those will, what the outcome, what are you trying to get from the student? Like Catherine said, like, what's breaking your heart? Those are very interesting responses. And actually that's what made us decide, oh, this is a good candidate. This one we're not sure about. It's what was breaking that student's heart globally. Oh, I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions later, feel free to contact me. And again, I already uploaded the PowerPoint into the document. Also, one thing can I share just one more time real quick, Catherine? I know my time's up.
Yes, and I think Harry might have had a question too.
Okay. So I loaded up, I have 10,000 documents, guys, but I try to stay very organized. This is my Ignatian Global Scholars thing. So I uploaded into the shared folder this document. So something we did last semester, it was a lot of work, is just prep. And again, a lot of it done virtually, but we decided to do the inventory. And I think I shared this at another meeting, but I wanted you all to have access to the grid that was created by our team, and not by me, someone on the team. And it has the different components of the IGS program. As you can see here, experience, because they have to complete 7 of the 9. And what we did is we just brainstormed, what do we have here at Bellarmine? And we hit up all the teachers, all the department chairs, and all the co-curricular, all the club moderators. And then what we did is we created that inventory. What department, who's the contact, and what are we looking for? And so when we brainstormed that, we found out the different things in the curriculum. Like, for example, we have a marine biology, ethnic studies, the Holocaust literature class, and then the different events, the justice summits, the different events on campus, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, if you want to use that for your own context, I uploaded that, and you can just erase all my stuff and all your stuff.
Cora, I had a quick question. Sorry if I missed this, but I thought the presentation was very good. In terms of you saying some students were like, all right, we're definitely looking for this, and these students maybe we're not so sure about. Is there an opportunity for those students to apply again or later in the process? Obviously, it's a 2-year program, so there's a tight window. For our purposes at Loyola, we are rolling this out with application process right now, just like you, and then offering up it again at the beginning of their junior year I was wondering if you were doing the same, if I missed that.
Yes, thank you, definitely. So of the 12 applicants, we're gonna interview all 12. We had a concern about one, but we're gonna go ahead and interview that person. Because when you sit down with someone, maybe we didn't understand the response well enough. So like his response, his global concern was abortion. And he had thought that people, I thought it was okay, but it's, you know, when you're on a team, he said that he said teens are minimizing or devaluing life, and it was concern to him. But interesting, on my team, a lot of them are not in line with the Catholic Church, shall I say. So anyway, we're gonna, yes, so we're gonna interview the person, and then we're always gonna have, you know, he is a sophomore, he can come back, or whoever. If somebody doesn't make it, can come back and do that and interview again. So yeah, definitely. And also, God, what was the other part of your question, Harry?
Just if there was a secondary sort of enrollment period. I'm not sure how we're going to do this, but we started this like sort of true pilot that maybe we might use 2.5 years to kind of work out some of the kinks rather than the 2-year goal. But certainly as we go forward, this will be rolled out middle of their sophomore year or beginning of their sophomore year, and then again the beginning of their junior year. I was wondering if you had that option for students to enroll in at a later point. Say they were too busy, they had too many things going on right now as sophomores, but they're thinking, all right, if I could clear my schedule, maybe this would be a program that I want to be a part of and be intentional about.
Yeah, actually, we had one student who said he had COVID last semester at the end of December, and he said, can't put my mind around this. Can I try to, maybe I'll apply next semester. So yeah, definitely. I think that, thank you for bringing that up, but yes, that's why in the notebook, we have the names of all the people we're looking at and then who actually applied. So we're going to hit back all those students again. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Gosh, it's amazing where you have brought this, Rob and Cora and all of you so far. So we have a 20-minute break. Some of you can eat lunch, some can have a snack. Take care of what you need to. So we will be back here on the East Coast 12:40. So 11:40, 10:40, 9:40, whatever time zone you are in. Please just stay connected, I guess, and we'll mute and turn off our cameras. See you soon. Therese, as everyone starts coming back on, do you want to get set up? Do you need to share screen or, okay, great.
Sure, I will do that now.
So Therese Bauer of St. X is up next with how to manage students' progress.
Can you all see
Nope,
what?
I'm wrong. Sorry, how to retain students. Gave the wrong topic.
Okay, I'm good?
Yes.
Great. Shall I begin? Or are we waiting for a couple more minutes?
Please begin. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Therese Bauer, for anyone that I have not met yet, and I'm an English teacher at St. Xavier High School in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm also the Global Education Coordinator. So my topic today is how to retain students, which is an ongoing effort at St. X. We're new to Ignatian Global Scholars. We will have our first cohort of 9 seniors earning this distinction at graduation in May. So just along with everybody else, we're learning as we go. But I thought I would mention a couple of things that have been effective at St. X in terms of retaining students who join the IGS program. So the first, and I'm going to talk about 3 things. The first is a course that I teach called Global Perspectives, which at St. X is our Global Scholar Anchor course. The second is community, and the third is experiences. So these are 3 things that are working reasonably well to keep candidates active in the program as they make their way toward earning the requirements. So the first thing is the Global Perspectives course. I'm teaching it for the third time. It's a semester elective that is open to sophomores and juniors. And at St. X, we decided that this course would be required. It's one of the four. So every student who gets the Global Scholar distinction will have taken this class as one of his four curricular requirements if he decides to go that route. But no matter what, he has to take it. I'll just read this course description to give you an overview. And I know this is not new information for some of you. You've seen versions of these slides before. Global Perspectives seeks to create global citizens who take action toward creating a more just and sustainable future. Guided by the universal apostolic preferences, the course will use contemporary world literature to examine issues of global significance, such as education, poverty, peace and justice, migration, and climate change. In addition to reading novels, students will watch films, conduct research, and implement individual and group projects on global topics of choice. Through virtual exchanges and other activities, students will gain a deeper awareness of the international network of Jesuit schools and will consider their role in carrying out its global mission. So that's the course in a nutshell, and I'll just take you very quickly through the units that we cover. They're organized around the UAPs. Showing the Way to God, that particular UAP suffuses all of the units. So I introduce each different other UAP themed unit with one of the prayers. We've done things like have students write examens and read them over the PA every week. And students composed a prayer book. Each student picked a UAP and a related topic and wrote a prayer, and we distributed that to our school community. And it's been fun because some faculty members have used those prayers at the beginning of meetings that we've had. So our essential question for Showing the Way to God is, what is God calling me to do for the world? Then we move on to Journeying with Youth. We read a memoir about a child soldier, and that essential question is, what are the conditions which prevent and disrupt the education of children around the world? And each of these UAPs is also tied to one or two sustainable development goals, which you can see on the slides. The next unit is Caring for Our Common Home. We read a very short novel set in the Amazon rainforest, and our essential question is, why are the Earth's rainforests so critical to the health and future of the planet? On the other side of the slide, I have either films or documentaries that I typically will show as a part of that unit. Then we do a gender equality unit under Walking with the Excluded and examine the kinds of discrimination that women around the world face. Kim Ji-young, born 1982, is the text that I use for that unit. Another Walking with the Excluded unit that looks at migration. So our essential questions are, what factors contribute to the migration of people around the world? What are the experiences of migrants and refugees? And then a very key part of the course, culminating experience, is the impact project that each student needs to do. And I give about 20% of class time throughout the whole semester for, we call it Genius Time, kind of like Google's Genius Hour. And students begin by just exploring and anything that is of interest to them, but I kind of guide them in the direction of UAP related or SDG related topics. And then over time, they narrow a focus, and their goal is to propose some kind of action step that will have a positive impact on that issue. That can be local, global, whatever. And a part of that project is to consult an in-house expert, because I'm an English teacher, and when students do science-heavy projects, I'm a little bit out of my element. So I'm able to direct them to other people in the building, or sometimes people in our local community who can advise them and just give them feedback on the direction that their project is taking. They give those presentations in class or sometimes during our flex time in the middle of the day. I send out an email to the whole community with a schedule of presentations and invite anyone who wants to stop in. So I've had some good success with that so far. And that's that culminating piece of the project. And just to give you an idea of some previous topics that students have tackled with varying success, if I'm being honest. But it's a wide variety. It's a wide variety. And then I just wanted to mention a couple of benefits for us to having an anchor course. And I know that's not the direction that every school would go. Schools have different needs, but it's been a good thing for us. It is a nice entry point for the IGS program because I get, this is another bullet point a little further down, but frequent contact with IGS candidates. And so it's an easy starting place. I have students in front of me every day. I can slowly go over the components of the IGS program. It gives them a little time to figure out if they're interested. And almost all of them are by the end of that semester elective. It's flexible. I'm an English teacher, so we're reading literature and memoir in this course, but I think any anchor course could be founded in any discipline or be interdisciplinary. It gives all of us a common vocabulary and an opportunity to speak at length about some of the core concepts. These students absolutely understand the definition of an engaged global citizen. Yesterday in class, we read Father Sosa's UAP letter, and they know the 4 UAPs, they know about the Sustainable Development Goals, and I'm very grateful as they move on from that course that we have this common vocabulary that I can refer to for the remaining time that they're in the program. It's very student driven, and I've noticed just by happenstance that I'm getting students with diverse neurotypes in there, and they're able to be very successful in some cases in turn. Like a student, I'm thinking of a student who in particular, who was maybe not a natural student, struggled with executive function challenges. And he did, after exploring a dozen different topics for his impact project, he finally settled on the discrimination against Asian Americans that's going on, he felt, locally and in the country. And then when I sent out the invitation to the whole school community, inviting anyone to come, the DEI director and assistant director came, but also the Chinese teacher replied and asked if she could bring her entire Chinese 3 class that happened to meet at the same bell to see the presentation. And the student, who sometimes struggles with school, just absolutely knocked it out of the park. He has such an ability to think on his feet and to speak extemporaneously. And his presentation was really well received. So that was a big success story. It also was not really a design, but as definitely a happy outcome of this course, that it develops a sense of community among the candidates. And because it's a mix of sophomores and juniors, I've seen friendships, sprouting in the classroom across those grade levels. And because of the in-house expert piece in the impact project, it also has made connections with faculty and staff members. And I know we've discussed earlier today, forming a team. I don't at the moment have a team, but I have great options because of the faculty and staff members who have replied and been of assistance to students who are doing their projects and who have just kind of pulled me aside to ask about the Global Scholar Program. So it was kind of an organic way of finding out who was interested in this work. I didn't want to assemble a committee until I knew what I would like the committee to do. And now we're at the point where I think that would be appropriate, and I have some good possibilities. Last year, so the other big thing I think that helps to retain students is community, and that sense of community begins in the course. Last year, one of the students in that very first semester elective approached me and asked if we could form a club. And I said, okay, well, what would the club do? And he said, well, examine global issues and learn about the world. And I said, well, aren't we already doing that? And here. And he said, yeah, but we could do it some more in a chill way. So thus the Global Explorers Club was born. We can't have any extracurriculars without an X in them, if you're wondering. And we meet regularly. The students voted at the beginning of the year on areas of the world they wanted to learn more about, and we divvy up topics and they get to hang out together. It's also an opportunity to get freshmen involved before they've heard officially about the IGS program. And then the third thing I think it has a lot of potential for retaining students is experiences that we can offer. And some of the ones that I've done, I have done during class time in Global Perspectives, but I don't think it necessarily has to go that way. And just to give you a couple examples of things that could happen outside of a course, maybe after school once a month or as just one-offs, are pictured here. So we did the La Silla Roja project last fall, and that was a really big success. And the students had some ideas about how to modify that for our context and make it even more engaging for our school community. There's an exercise, I guess is the right word, that I do in the course when we learn about human rights, and it's a human rights marketplace activity where some students are given rights to sell and some are given fake money, and I basically open up the market and they have to buy and sell human rights. And that's a good way of looking at which rights we value the most and to think about how that exercise might play out in other cultures where other rights might be valued a little bit more. We did the Miles for Refugees activity last October, November. Cora was kind enough to loop me into the World That Christ Desires exercise that she was doing with some other Jesuit educators, and that was a great experience. I had read, these are all things that I did not invent, by the way, but I'm a good scourer of the internet for ideas that will generate experiences for students. Students tracked their palm oil consumption with an app. I think I came across this idea on, I know it was a Jesuit website, I just can't remember which one at the moment. And they tracked their consumption of palm oil over a period of time and then did research on corporations' palm oil use, and then wrote letters to corporations either commending or criticizing their practices. I use a gender equality Padlet here that you can see in the corner so that they can learn about the lives of women in different parts of the world. Those are videos linked. And then more recently, a National Museum of American Diplomacy migration crisis simulation, which I just did for the first time right before Christmas. And that was a really wonderful experience. So it's a fictionalized migration crisis, and students are given different roles. Department of State for the United States, representative from the UDHR, representatives from the various countries involved, and then they have to just work and try to come up with a compromise solution to this problem. So I will definitely be doing that again. That was really, really helpful. So those are, that's kind of an overview of the things that are working here to retain students. This is a Padlet I created last year when I thought I would be attending the colloquium, but then I got COVID. And I'm willing, of course, to share this. And in this column over here, projects and tools are links to most of those project ideas. If anybody is interested, I can put that in the SharePoint folder if you'd like to read more about those. So I am ready for questions if you have any.
Therese, it's Alan up in Cleveland. Hi.
Hi.
Nice to see you again. I just have one quick question, and please forgive me if you mentioned this at the beginning of your comments. Do students take your class who are not in the IGS program?
Yes, because they don't declare their commitment or interest. All they do is enroll in the course. So far, we have not had any kind of application process because we haven't really needed it, I suppose, is the best way to answer that. But they declare their intention by the end of the course. And then we're using Canvas right now to track the progress toward the requirements. So if a student says, yes, I'm in, then I put him in the Canvas course and I start tracking.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Therese, would you mind stop sharing just so we can see the pieces? I really love that your anchor course that's grounded in your expertise, which is literature, and then the thought of, okay, if I'm a science teacher, I'm a social studies, that these anchor courses can really be generated and focused, I guess the founding source by who is teaching it. And then as you include people from so many other disciplines in it. That was really, gave me a lot to think about.
Therese, do you have any examples of really great, I mean, you mentioned this one student who gave a presentation. Do you have any examples that you could share of what is a model kind of presentation? I think that's one of the things that for our students, like what they try to envision, like, well, what does my project look like? What do I have to do? Are there some good examples of student work?
Sure. And that's the most challenging part of the course for me is helping students get from an interest to a proposal and to think of a reasonable action step. Now, what I say to them is, you are not beholden to implement your idea, only to propose it. So, for example, a student last year was very interested in migration and refugees. And so his project was on the portrayal of migrants and refugees in the media. And he looked at, I can't even tell you, I don't know, 50 different, he had spliced together 50 little clips from news sources into one video, just to show how negative that portrayal is. And then we talked a lot about what can be done to improve this situation. So we discussed the possibility of hosting like a community dinner at St. X and inviting migrants and refugees in the community to come and sort of have a potluck and tell their stories. Part of that is because I had a refugee from Afghanistan visit my class a couple years ago, and he was very compelling. So we're working on that as a possibility for April, even though he proposed the idea, in the fall of 2021. Another student, the student who did the Asian American discrimination, eventually, after a lot of batting ideas around, came up with a proposal for Asian American History Month, where he would be proposing a program that everyone in our community could follow to learn more about Asian American contributions to Cincinnati. So he picked out film festivals and other local events that people could attend, or restaurants to visit, museum exhibitions. And so the idea was that a link to his website where he had laid out this program would go out to the entire community at the beginning of Asian American History Month. And knowing more about the contributions of this culture would, engender more interest and respect for it. That was the idea behind his idea. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. So I guess my follow-up would be, they present these, in person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there like a requirement for them to have a website or a Google slide deck or a video presentation or something like that?
They have to have a tangible product of some kind.
Okay.
So they have to have something besides the PowerPoint that is the presentation tool, some other thing, whether that's an infographic, a website. Another student was interested in specifically in Afghan refugees that have settled in Cincinnati, because there's been a big increase. And he worked with a local agency to develop an Amazon wish list of things that people in the community need. And then we hope for that wish list to be a part of our invitation to the community dinner in April. So those two different student projects can be combined for this single event that we hope to actually manifest.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Therese, I had a question in terms of, just to clarify, so you said it's students who enroll in the class, but it's not everyone in the sophomore grade that enrolls in the class. You have like some 400 some students in the sophomore grade, right? So maybe more. So I mean, how many students enroll into the class, and then what do you say the percentage of kids that are interested in that program would be? And then secondarily, do you encounter students who really struggle? I mean, not just coming up with a final project idea, but like you're really pulling teeth to be like, you got to do this reflection. You got to, like, you're months behind on this. How do you kind of dial into those students who need a little more like TLC in the process, rather than kids who want to finish it in like a semester? I don't know. So
yeah, great questions. I have 20. So the course runs both semesters, and I have 10 students in each section. I would love to have 15 in each section. If I had more than that, that'd be a great problem to have. I'd have to figure out how to give individual attention to 20 students, 20 different topics. So that would be interesting, but I'm open to a challenge. Recruitment is is another challenge because students are taking an English class, in the case of this course, and then they're signing up for more reading, which is not a high school student favorite thing to do. But because of that, it self-selects, I think, Harry, for students that are motivated and they're interested. And I don't have to hound everyone because the project is part of the course. That's one of the nice things about having the course, is that I'm not chasing kids all over the building saying, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z for this program, because they're doing it in front of me, with me. And then by the time the course is over, maybe out of 20 per year, this is the second year, I think 17 are deciding that they want to go ahead and pursue the IGS. So that's been a nice benefit. And then I know them pretty well, and we're able to have check-ins frequently about how they're doing in their progress toward the requirements.
Therese, what suggestions or input do you have for the people who do not currently have an anchor class? So what have you seen that will transfer, I guess, over for retainment?
I think, as I was saying, I think opportunities for shared experience. So even if it's not an academic or curricular choice, regular meetings where you could do a migration simulation, or where you could do a deep dive into the UAPs as an introduction. That foundational work in the course has been invaluable. So if I was told tomorrow this course isn't going to run anymore, then I would probably set up, I don't know how often, but fairly often, I would want to meet with students at some point and try to accomplish some of the same goals, but outside the classroom.
I think that brings up an interesting point. And, I don't know if there's others who are far enough into this process to be able to comment, as Therese has done, about how to meet with students with enough frequency that they know you and you know them, and their requirements are being followed, or that there's an educational component happening. Some of that's the context, I suppose, that we're hoping to provide our students as well, so that there's a shared understanding of what the program's about, other than just kind of that introduction or some video that they might watch that we've created for them. So I'm not sure if anyone else is at a point where they could chime in about that at their school.
We've started with monthly meetings. We just accepted 20 sophomores. We did the interview process like Cora did. And I was the only one interviewing, so it kind of was limited, and I definitely would want to expand that as we go forward and build a team, but pretty much is me right now. And we're doing monthly meetings following the reflections, and I've taken the reflections that were provided and created a program. So the first one was that global citizenship inventory, where what level of participation you're at. That self-reflection was the first assignment, leaving the first meeting. Then the next one, the idea of the hope from the Ignatian Film Festival thing, like reflect on those and say, why are we doing this? Starting with that hope place. And for us, then from there, we're hoping that my goal would be, I'm meeting them on January 25th next, would be so it's like once a month, essentially. So every month, every time they come in, they have a reflection, and then somewhere 3 to 4 weeks later, I'm seeing them. That's a bit too spaced out, but it's the reality of our school, and this is after school. So the kids, when I interviewed them, like, are you willing to miss baseball practice once a month when we get to the spring to do this? Are you going to have this guy? And that was part of the conversations and interviews we had, just getting kids to make the time, because as it is, our kids already, I would love to do a course like this, but if they're taking a 7th course, and if a kid wants to take 2 languages or 2 histories or 2 sciences, we already have all those options. But now we're saying, oh, take this other course that has this great value central to the mission, but our boys are now thinking like, but it would be better if I take AP Bio and Honors Chem at the same time, or Latin and French 1. And that's so adding anything academic becomes and I would love this, but it would be like to model something else. And even now I'm thinking like, oh, it'd be great if my kids read a book, but I'm seeing them once a month. How much can, and like, wait, read this whole book, see you in a month. I'm like, the reality is it's, there's certain smaller nuggets that I'm giving them to do that they could, if they get it done before they show up. But that's what we're doing now. We would love to do something different, but once a month. And then the goal is next year we'll have two cohorts, because we'll have the sophomores apply at the beginning of the following year for the year one. And I'll have year one set, and I'll be crafting year two, with hopefully all of them being done by their junior year, being said, you're a global scholar, so you can write about this on your college applications. You have this distinction. So that's hopefully our hook to keep them through the program for 2 years. Some kids may get it all done this year, and next year they still have to come in for reflections to get their reflection component done.
I'm in a similar boat to Pierre. My cohort is bigger. It's like 45 students. And what I really like is they have on their transcript a course called Global Citizenship and Ignatian Discernment. I offer them reflections, readings, videos for them to kind of have, do on a message board, but it's a pass-fail class. It's totally asynchronous. I have them meet with me once a month. The problem is accountability across the board. Getting them to show up to those once a month meetings is in conflict with their other activities, their sports, their club meetings, makeup tests, maybe even just going out and getting lunch, so it's a struggle to have any real strong commitment when they know they're not getting sort of graded or assessed on it. And the same would be true for the asynchronous modules. I have found that I've got more buy-in than maybe I would. I don't have as much as I would want, but perhaps it's more than I expect, because they actually are interested and they do, get involved in some of the projects and discussions because they're passionate about it. But I still lack that kind of hook for how do I hold them accountable to doing it if they're not doing it, and what does that mean for their future in the program? So I have to kind of work through that vetting process of what is acceptable and what is not in terms of your continuation as we build through this program. What I have also found is that there's probably 10 guys or so who are, whatever I ask them to do, they're on it. We have an Earth Week meeting tomorrow. So we're going to talk about, some events that we're going to have in April around care for our common home. And they want to establish a team of students who are going to be the leaders on bringing in experts and, speakers and, solar panel companies and electric car companies to be, have a fair on campus. So like there's that group of students who, when I put out an invitation to be part of something, they're very eager. Do I give them continue going to the well with those guys consistently if I know that there are other students who are maybe not as invested? And how do I get them invested when they already have so many other things going on? So I'm not, I'm just kind of speaking to that challenge. I think what Therese has that we all wish we could have maybe is that schedule, that period in the schedule, that these students are required to take. And it's a graded class, because you really have a captive audience then. So I'm kind of in this sort of interstitial space between, it's on your transcript and you are held accountable to a certain degree, but what's really the response to not doing this reflection or, contributing to that message board versus being, making it a graded class, which I don't know if I think I might have smaller numbers if that happened.
Thank you, Dan. We're going to transition, we have space in the schedule, so Jenny can start a few minutes late. I want to quickly respond to what Dan's saying, though, because I think it's important. Each school gets to adjust this and adapt it to the reality of your school. That was the way it was set up. That's what JSN intends, and I think that's important. At the same time, we do want this to be a reach, and we want it to be important and special, and to reward and to celebrate the students who are those 10 students always, while trying to engage and, and motivate more. So in saying that, what came to mind is in conversations with Seattle University, if we get to go forward, we're looking at probably a pass-fail. But in order for credits to be accepted by universities, you have to set like a minimum. What does pass mean? In some places it's a D, for example. And so my response is, in my mind, when we pass a student and they receive a certificate, it's a B or above. So while a course is maybe not graded, maybe something to keep in our minds that a student is giving. We don't have to be like one more thing that they just kind of check off and do and kind of get, like, but they don't need to be perfect in it, but a B level of investment, I guess, is, and maybe this is a longer conversation, but that's my thinking at this time. And if anyone would like to engage more about that, we can let me know, and we'll do that at a different conversation. I think it's an important conversation, especially if we get to the point where we do have the option for college credit. So let's do the same thing. It's 14 after. Let's give 2 minutes, 3 minutes, maybe. Let's go till 20 after. At 20 after, because our closing will take 5 minutes. So if we can breathe, process, take notes, jot down, continue to keep track of all your questions and send those to me, and we can organize continuing talks, even if it's just via our email around that. So at 20 after the hour, Jenny will begin with how to manage students' progress. Thanks. Jenny, do you want to set up?
Sure.
Thank you. So Jenny is from Hyde Center, BC High, is going to share how to manage students' progress.
So hi, everybody. I'm Jenny from BC High. I actually started working in the Hyde Center about 4 years ago. I moved over from the enrollment office at BC High, and I'm going to talk about the Hyde Scholars Program, as we call it here, which predates me. So Hyde Scholars have been around for about 8 to 10 years. So it's a long-standing program for us, and so things might look a little different than what you all are sort of experiencing now. When I thought about coming into this role and managing this group of students, these are the pieces that really stood out to me in terms of how was I going to manage this. I also started in the fall of 2019. So all of this changed very rapidly come March of 2020. So things had adjusted and have adjusted pretty consistently, but things that you're going to want to consider, as we've all talked about a couple of times today, what is the ideal size for your program, for your cohort, and how many members of your community, how many adults are going to be able to help out with managing the program? Setting realistic expectations is important from the beginning so that you make sure that you're managing students well, or being able to work with the team to manage students well. How long do you want the program to be? So I'll talk about what it looks like at BC High, but we often have students who are involved in this for 3 years, not just 2. So considering the length of the program, the duration that you'll have the kids. Opportunities for students to fulfill requirements. I mean, sort of the flexibility with which you're going to give them outside of maybe specific things that you are creating or offering. How are you measuring success? Is it grades? Is it a portfolio? Is it journaling? What is important at the end for them? And then the final products that you'd like students to have. So for us here at BC High, we actually have an open enrollment in our scholars program for students in grades 9 and 10. So at the beginning of the year, we go to our co-curricular fair, we send out notices and emails, but any students in grades 9 and 10 can apply to this program through, I would say, October, middle of October. The application is a very simple form. I ask them about what their interest is in global citizenship. Do they consider themselves a global citizen currently, or why would they like to become a more global citizen? And just what they're hoping to get out of the program. In that, I also make sure that a parent signs off on their involvement. The parent is aware that this is a program they've decided they want to participate in. We are really lucky. That means that a lot of students opt into this program. We have a very diverse group of students that come in, across all backgrounds. So we haven't had kind of any issues of worrying about that. That's also in part because the Hyde Center has been a distinguisher in our enrollment marketing materials for quite some time. So when families are first learning about BC High, the Hyde Center and the programs we offer, travel, the scholars program, and then we also have a Spanish language program, are all kind of front and foremost in their minds. So parents are very aware of what we offer, and so are students as they go through the process. For us, the majority of our program is completed inside grade 10 and 11, but really the harder or the bigger projects come through for juniors in grade 11. So the philosophy behind that is we're building them up to these sort of bigger experiences. So similar to Therese's project, our students have to complete a project dealing with a sustainable development goal. In grades 9 and 10, we're doing things like speakers every month. So at least once a month, there is an option for students to go to a global speaker. They have to complete at least 3 every year. The hope is that they're hearing about topics that are interesting to them. They're starting to question, oh, what more can I learn? So coming up, we'll have somebody from the Boston area United Nations group. They're going to talk about progress on sustainable development goals, specifically in Boston. We have a parent who owns several oyster farms, and he's going to talk about changing climates and what sustainable oyster farming actually does to protect our waters. We're talking about having somebody from a local organization come and talk about innovations in so how we're combating homelessness here in Massachusetts. So what are the different ways that we're looking at this problem, and how are they addressing them in a creative sort of outside of the box solution? So covering a huge variety of topics. And then also they do summer reading each year. So those summer reading books focus in some more. So the hope is that they're getting exposed to all these different ideas. And then when we get to I'm asking to go in depth, they have a wide variety of things that they've been exposed to sort of pick from and think back on. Generally, we have 30 to 50 students. I know that's a huge range. The smallest number we've had has been about 20, and the largest has been about 65. So at any point in time, I have about 140, 150 students that are participating in this program. Seniors do have some requirements I asked them to fulfill, mainly reflections in their first semester, so they are still active and involved, and will often come back and help mentor the younger students. So that's another great group as you're thinking about, hey, how can I help manage this as we grow? Students who have completed the program or have evolved further often do like to come back and offer feedback and resources and sort of continue that help. There's only one person, it's me, monitoring their progress. And that's sort of informed this philosophy that I'm approaching with, which is, we certainly want everyone to feel like this is accessible to them. Some of our other programs are not, they're for designated groups. So this is a program that's open to all. And I understand that that means not everyone will complete the program. I try to be flexible. I give ideal timeframes, but I remind students pretty consistently that this is a program they've signed up for, and some of this does fall on them to manage themselves. If a student is falling behind, I use email pretty regularly or one-on-one meetings to bring them in and say, hey, what's going on? What's happening? What is the struggle? I also always make sure to copy their parents on any communications I'm sending regarding a deviation from kind of the standard track. I also, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, I run a Canvas course for all of these students. So anything that I email to them to say, here's a speaker opportunity, here's some notes about a project that's coming up, I email because they tend to see that a little more easily, but I also post it in Canvas so parents can see that it is kind of going out. So they look for the information in both of those places. Our program requirements, I have a lot of flexibility for them to fulfill their requirements. So in offerings and in timings, when I set up my Canvas course, almost everything is due at the end of the year. So if I say, oh, you have to go to 3 speakers, I create 3 speaker assignments. They're all technically due at the end of the year. So they have the flexibility to say, I'm going to go to 1 in October, then I play a winter sports. I'm not going to do any, and I'll do 2 towards the end of the year when my school is over. In offerings, I think we've all mentioned this, it's important to have a team of people and different resources that you're pulling from. I utilize other folks on campus that are having speakers or creating other project opportunities. One of our faculty members is planning on showing a movie about climate change later on this year. And so I said, hey, can I open this up to our scholars as an opportunity to come and do this? Anything that JSN puts out in terms of Zoom conferences or online things that students could possibly be interested in, I'll check and see if it's appropriate for students. Educate Magist. And then it's also, once again, kind of tapping students. One student this year told me he really wanted to create a student-led series about students' cultural backgrounds. So I've been kind of helping him with that, but he leads it for the most part. We've had our Hispanic Latino Association speak about the Caribbean, so Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic most recently. Armenian Culture Club gave some history about Armenia. So trying to create lots of opportunities that aren't necessarily me doing all of the work to make them accessible. Because I use Canvas, I also make sure that every assignment or every requirement that a student fulfills has something attached to it that they have to turn in. Oftentimes that's a reflection so that I can say, okay, yes, you did do this. I take attendance at every event that counts as a global event. And I create a registration form in advance so that students can sign up for things. It lets me know, A, that they're reading my emails and coming, but it also helps just take attendance later on when I'm going through it. We do not grade. I do not grade the majority of assignments. I say they are complete or they are incomplete. I try to give students a rubric of this is what my expectations are. If you don't meet those expectations, I will ask you to resubmit. They can resubmit as many times as they want until it is complete, and that's fine with me. I try and, as I said, give a timeline of here's what the each year should look like or could look like so that students have an idea of what's expected of them. But I do have flexibility in that. As I said, I just kind of communicate with them. We create a one-on-one plan if they're off of that schedule, so we both can agree, here's what we're going to do. And then I copy parents. Here's the agreement that we've come to. This is the expectation moving forward. And this is how we're going to proceed. Prior to COVID, we had a file cabinet in the office where students could drop off their reflections, assignments, and have a folder of things that they could go through. The front of that folder had a little checklist in it, so they could just check things off as they went. It was an easy way for me to go through and sign off and say, yes, I've seen this, this is going to complete, so that they always had access to it. It was nice because we could go back and see what they had done very easily. They could see what they had done very easily. So that was a really good thing. But then when COVID happened, we moved over to Canvas. I create one course per grade year. So I have a High Scholars class of 23, High Scholars class of 24, and I just simply add to it each year based on what the requirements are for that year. So if in freshman year, I'm saying you're going to do 3 global speakers in your summer reading assignment, those go up in the beginning of the year. They see them all very clearly. And then towards the end of the year, I'll add, okay, for sophomore year, here's what we're going to look forward to. Here's what we should be thinking about. In terms of meetings, also for Canvas, I do use Chura.com as an external tool because I have so many students. So I do use that to make sure that we're all turning in their individual work. Meetings, it is really hard to get these guys all together. First off, because they're a huge group, and as everybody else has said, they are running in a million different directions after school, before school. We do have an activity period, even that at this point gets pretty booked. So I try to meet with them by grade 3 times a year, at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and towards the end of the year when we're getting close to, okay, everything really, if you haven't started to do all of these things, we need to have to talk about that. And then individually at least once. I am lucky because my full-time job is global education. So I have an office. I'm in here 99% of the time. Students know they can find me, and they do. During the weeks where we have extra help, I always try to send an email out to students and remind them, hey, if you are not sure about what's going on with High Scholars, if you want to have another meeting, I'll be here. So if we have any wider school sort of office hours or help time, I'm also available to them. I also attend anything that we say is a global sort of experience that'll count for this program. I try and attend. So there are very few times where I am not present. So I do see them more regularly, but not all of them together at once. So that's sort of how we manage that. And then for us, for outcomes, what do students get at the end of this? So we have always had a certificate, a High Scholar certificate. We will now move over to an Nation Global Scholar certificate that goes out for senior awards. So when we have those at the end of the year, they're given that certificate. It is a class on their transcript. Freshman and sophomore and senior years, it is a pass-fail class. It has no weight. It doesn't factor into their GPA, but it does indicate, hey, you've been involved in this program. You've completed the requirements for this year. So it is on there. Part of that is because our guidance and college counseling offices did want there to be a little bit more of a story. Many of our students were starting to talk about it at college interviews, and this is what it is. And how did we really show that in a compelling way? And so that's where that comes from. In junior year, they receive 1 honors class credit. So just like any other honors class, honors English or honors math, if they complete everything, then they are awarded credit for that. If a student is not going to receive credit, I'm very communicative with them up front early on. And once again, copying parents, that seems to be one the parents were really invested in, along with our graduation program. For anyone that completes the program, they receive a little globe symbol next to their name. So similarly, if you get a star for NHS, you get a globe for scholars. So if those 2 things are in jeopardy, I start warning students very far in advance, and I make sure that parents are kind of aware, hey, this is a possibility that this might not be the end of what your student expected it to be. So that's sort of how we do it. I'm going to really quickly switch my share. Hold on 1 second. And I'll show you my very messy Canvas class. Uh-oh. Do you guys see my Canvas class? Yes, okay, good. So I have a double screen, so sometimes when I see on one, it doesn't come together. But you can see that I have like a global speaker reflection, check marks. It tells me if things are late, but everything is in here. This is my sophomore class, so it's quite long. Or my junior class, so it's very long. So you can see all of these different things around here. We get comments, we can talk back and forth about it. This is just a sample of a global speaker reflection form that I asked students to fill out. So I asked them to give their name, the speaker that they attended and when, a brief description, what are the takeaways, differences, because we're learning made in your intellectual, personal, spiritual, or ethical development. But so you can see they have to sort of fill this out so that I can say, oh yes, you did go, you did understand what was being said, you paid attention. Similarly, this is a summer reading assignment. So there's questions that tie into the summer reading. And then there's usually either a longer essay or an option of a project. The student chose to do a project. So he talked a little bit about art and how we see sustainability in art. And he made an original piece of artwork. So he did a really phenomenal job. So that's sort of the basics. Stop this and say, can I answer questions? Tell you more about anything?
Jenny, for the logistics of the Canvas course, I've never done one where it's just a completed assignment or not. So that literally just shows up as a check mark. I was wondering if you're doing a 0 or a 1 versus complete or not, but you're just looking to see, is it done?
Yeah, complete or incomplete. And then if a student hands something in and it's incomplete, I leave them a note on there that just explains why. So I give them that specific feedback in Canvas.
Okay, awesome.
Do you have a template, Jenny, of those? It looked like that reflection for that speaker is a template that you just apply to all speakers. Is it the same thing?
Exactly, and I'll upload that.
Okay, that's great. And then another question, all the speakers, and this is something that I envision something very similar. And I'm finding it like I've had 3 speakers this year, which was, I thought I would have like 8, and there's just no way I'm going to have 8. How do you farm out all, how do you attract speakers? How do you schedule them? Are they in conflict with other things going on campus? I'm curious to hear a little bit more about your process for that.
Yeah, some of them are arranged through other offices or other people here through campus. So some of them I beg my way into. We do also try and capitalize on teachers that are here, faculty or staff that are here that have had a global experience. So one of our teachers taught in China over the course right before the pandemic and came home right before everything kind of went crazy. So she talked about that experience. What was it like living abroad? Dan Carmody, he would speak about like, being a part of the Peace Corps. So trying to remember that it can be somebody from your local community that is willing to just spend a free period or a morning or an afternoon talking, and they love it. They love hearing about that other side of their teachers' lives. Parents, like I mentioned, in this process, you start to meet parents that have these really interesting, this is why I want my son to be involved in the Hyde Center. And I make them, those poor parents, I make a mental note and then bug them all the time. Just like, you said you cared about this. So would you like to come speak? And then some of it is just outreach. And so when I see an interesting article or somebody in the local community that's doing things, it's finding them and asking if they're willing to come in. And actually, like, over the summer, one of the speakers at Rob's summer program that we all did was from Loyola that had started.
Aiden Riley, the Farm Link,
So as I investigated that, there's a Boston sort of tie-in. And so the Boston area Gleaners are a tie with that organization. And so because of what your student brought to that program, I said, I can think about this from a local perspective. So it's just finding that right option. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think I'm going to start tying us together. One of the reasons that this scholars program, this is feedback I received at the principals gathering from principals and some other folks, is one of the reasons this is so well received right now and successful is the amount of detail that is in the program that we have ready for sharing. Listening to you all today, the increased depth and detail and meticulousness of what you are doing just brings it to a stratospheric level. So I'm so excited, and my mind is going like, how do we really include all of these other pieces for people who want to start doing this? So maybe that happens through a resource database. Maybe that's something we look at as we reflect on the pilot year. Some themes that I have been jotting down as I'm listening are that maybe we want to give more attention to or have further conversations is that leadership team formation, kind of what that looks like and the dynamics. If there may be a desire for a student profile to kind of hone down a little more directly what characteristics of a student that we're looking for. Maybe Pete, I think you had mentioned in a comment, do we want to balance out cohorts? And I kind of think that might depend school to school on the student body and all of that, but definitely a suggestion to put out there. If you do not have an anchor course, how do you sustain regular meetings with your cohorts? What level of engagement is required to receive the certificate? The trip and exchange piece that we already have a time set for attending that. And then coming up, I almost had to jump on you all about not reading hemispheres because there was something about a student global citizenship course. And, there is a student global citizenship course that we have had several times in hemispheres that Jeff Miller had adapted the Educate Magis one. What it isn't, which I think is what you are referring to in the comments, is it's not a module on Educate Magis. So I think what I'm understanding, and I agree, it's a really interesting thought. Is there someone, got a lot of experts out there, is there someone that might want to work with Educate Magis or in another way to create an asynchronous global citizenship module for students? I think that's a hugely interesting. And since obviously that is a very time-consuming thought, but if one of you comes across, decides to do a sabbatical or something and wants to do that, reach out. Collaboration. Oh, Cora, amazing. All right, we got Cora on it. Collaboration with other Ignatian Global Scholars. That is something that I have had in my sights for years. It's a very exciting thought, and I think it's something that we continue to look at moving ahead. I had a meeting with Magis Americas. They're like the U.S. Affiliation with Fe en Alegría. Fe en Alegría has an amazing, it's Generación 21, a youth group. And so I think that's another thing that that we want to maybe keep in mind, and even locally, if you've got other schools near each other, can you connect your global scholars with the others in your city or your state, or at an ISN or RUPE session or something like that? So a sharing of a speaker series and a speaker database. Those were the things that I wrote down. If there are other things that you're like, wait, this, I really want us to look at this too, then just shoot me an email and I'll add that. I want to reiterate again that on behalf of JSN, our expectation is that you take this program and you adapt it to your school. We don't want it to be a box that you have to step into, but take everyone's ideas, what works with you, share your ideas as you adapt, because each school is so different. And in timing, in student body, in support, in stipends or budgets. So make this work for you. And then the gift that you give is, this is how I did this this is how we adapted with zero budget or with students not able to travel internationally, etc. To remend, there is not a Catherine meeting without mentioning hemisphere. So our next, an issue came out today. Hopefully you were probably all reading it during the session, but if you weren't, be sure to read it. There's some great stuff in it. Our next issue is interculturality. So I'm putting an ask out there, read the global identifier interculturality. This is right up our alley. JSN with Kristen Ross-Cully and Educate Magis are going to do a master class this summer with Jim D'Angelo is going to moderate on interculturality. So think about that. And if there's something, I mean, listening to all of you today, I'm like, oh my gosh, what you are doing is beyond incredible. So if there's one of these beyond incredible or just really cool things that you're doing that you think aligns with interculturality, please share and send in to me as a article. Dan.
As you mentioned that, one of the things that I was on that Zoom and several others in here were as well yesterday for the interculturality course. And what struck me is the focus is really on skills and not so much on like content around like global issues. And I think that might be an area for us to focus on as a cohort over the next, say, 3 years is there's always going to be themes that emerge around global citizenship and, international issues, challenges that the world faces. There's also skills that are relatively permanent, not permanent, they can change too, but there's, I think finding that balance in whatever our coursework is would be really interesting for our schools. And I've found myself leaning towards what are the issues happening in Ukraine or in Taiwan or in Iran and investigating those from a historical or sociological perspective. But there's also, I think, a real value in working on what are the skills that we expect our students to be able to walk away from, that they can talk about when they leave this program, that they've gained, not just knowledge, but also a way of thinking about the world. And so I know we talk about that, but having that real, so I would invite and encourage as many people in this cohort to take that interculturality class, because I think we might zero in on some of those topics.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's great. And I think if you take that class, and I think I would offer as an option, if you take that class, one of the hopes is that out of that you create a project using it. And so even a cohort of you as that project could put that into kind of a program or a framework. Your principles, I'm following the chat as we go too. So an email, Kristen Ross-Cully is going to be sending an email out to your principals later this week to nominate participants. So if you have any interest, please chat with your principal. And I'm pretty sure we recorded that. So it should be shared, and maybe just reach out to Kristen Smith or Kristen Ross-Cully for that. And it is mostly asynchronous with just 3 in-person meetings. In last of the chat things, someone had asked about the timeline for Seattle U. We're hoping in the next couple of months to have a more firm idea of if that's possible and what it would look like. So to whoever asked that. So back to interculturality, great. And I love I attended that yesterday. I'm like, I worked with Educate Magis when we created the first module. And I'm like, I want to take this class like over and over, listening to it. It was really exciting. So hopefully we have a Nation Global Scholars /IGEM group. Is there anything else that you feel is unanswered, or that you would like to make kind of an emphasis on, of, really just double down on one of the points that you learned today. Is there anything that anybody would like to share?
I have a question, Catherine, and this may be something that is a longer conversation for another point in time.
Okay.
As we think about new schools joining into this concept of IGS, and I'm thinking big picture here, right? This is the JSN's program. My question has to do with how our PACE or our provincials are aware of this programming and the overlap, so that it is also a priority for them in our schools. And I know global citizenship is, just wanting to find a way to, and I know that's not your jurisdiction, and so we can table this a deeper conversation for later, but I'm just thinking about the overlap between those entities and the different polls that our schools have for priorities. So how to continue to emphasize this at that level. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. And I think it is a longer conversation, and maybe one I have with Bob and PACE, but PACE, I do share, this has been shared with PACE. And as you know, the West province is doing their principals gathering has global dimensions as the theme. And so there's going to be a panel, I think most of you are on this call, that will be presenting JSN global acts or programs out. At the same time, I do think that voice from your school, and I really love, Rob, when you started that, like our whole day started with talk to your board. I thought that was just brilliant and such a great start. So I think if you can begin to increase that conversation, and when you have your PACE visits, to communicate the importance of this in an integral part of JSN, and I will continue that conversation from my side too. But I do think it's something to keep reminding each other about, and we don't want it. It's becoming integral, but we want it to be important to all parts of governance and support. PACE is your governance. We are your resource support. So thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Other questions or thoughts?
Catherine, this is kind of a ridiculous question because you just barely mentioned next March. But is there even a kernel of an idea of what that would look like? I'm just curious.
Oh, I will be needing a planning committee. So, so be careful of what you say and what you ask for. But yeah, right now, Ileana is looking at locations, and there's two potential, I don't even want to start sharing any of that in case, you never know the outcome. But once that's set, then we will begin to really plan. And so that's another reason, we have these programming. Some of you have some very special things going on in your schools in addition to what JSN is offering. So the more data and intelligence we can gather from each other, the more we have, and the more questions are out there. What are the other things that we want to attend to and pay attention to? So good. It's really exciting. I'm really excited about that opportunity. Good. All right. It is 3 minutes to the hour. This has left me just beaming with joy. I can't really tell you. how terrific the work that's happening, where you've brought it, where we are. Everybody from I'm just thinking about it to I'm presenting and have a really good take on it. So please continue to reach out to each other and to me. Good. Thank you all so much.